The title of this book is The Spirit of Jesus Christ. The author is Andrew Murray. Now we are in chapter 3. The title of chapter 3, The Worshipper of God. The Worshipper of God. There is a fleshly mind and a spiritual mind. In Colossians chapter 2 verse 18, Colossians chapter 1 verse 9. There is a will of the flesh and a will which is of God working by his Spirit. John chapter 1 verse 13, Philippians chapter 2 verse 13. There is a worship which is a satisfying of the flesh because it is in the power of what flesh can do. In Colossians chapter 2 verse 18 to 23. And a worship of God which is in the Spirit. It is this worship Jesus came to make possible and to realize in us by giving a new spirit in our innermost part, and then within that, God's Holy Spirit. In spirit and in truth, such a worshipper in spirit is worship in truth. Just as the word in spirit do not mean internal as contrasted with external observance, but spiritual, involved by God's Spirit, as opposed to what man's natural power can effect. So the word in truth do not mean hearty, sincere, upright. In all the worship of the Old Testament saints, they knew that God sought truth in the inward part. They sought him with their whole heart and most uprightly, and yet they attained not to that worship in spirit and truth, which Jesus brought us when he rent the veil of the flesh. Truth here means the substance, the reality, the actual possession of all that the worship of God implies, but in what it demands and what it promises. John speaks of Jesus as the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. And he adds, for the law was given by Moses, grace and truth come by Jesus Christ. If we take truth as supposed to falsehood, the law of Moses was just as true as the gospel of Jesus. They both came from God, but if we understand what it means that the law gave only a shadow of good things to come, and that Christ brought us the things themselves, their very substance, we see how he was fully of truth because he was himself the truth, the reality, all very life and love and power of God imparting itself to us. We then also see how it is only a worship in spirit that can be a worship in truth. In the actual enjoyment of that divine power, which is Christ's own life and fellowship with the Father, revealed and maintained within us by the Holy Spirit. The true worshipper worships the Father in spirit and in truth. All worshippers are not true worshippers. There may be a great deal of honest worship without it being worshipped in spirit and in truth. The mind may be intensely occupied, the feeling may be deeply moved, the will may be mightily roused, while yet there is but a little of the spiritual worship which stand in the truth of God. There may be great attachment to Bible truth, and yet through the predominant activity of that which cometh not from God's working but from man's effort, it may not be the Christ-given spirit breath worship which God seek. There must be accordance, harmony, unity between God, who is a spirit, and the worshipper drawing near in the spirit. Such doth the Father seek to worship. Such does the Father seek to worship him. The infinite, perfect Holy Spirit, which God the Father is, must have some reflection in the spirit which is in the child. And this can only be as the Spirit of God dwell in us. If we will strive to become such worshipper in spirit and in truth, true worshipper, the first thing we need is a sense of the danger in which we are from the flesh and its worship. As believer, we have in us a double nature. As believer, we have in us a double nature, flesh and spirit. The one is the natural part which is ever ready to intrude itself and to undertake the doing of what is needed in the worship of God. The other is the spiritual part, which may still be very weak and which possibly we do not yet knowing how to give its full sway. Our mind may delight in the study of God's word. Our feeling may be moved by the wonderful thought they reveal. Our will may be seek this in Romans chapter 7 verse 22. Delight in the law of God after the inward man. Delight in the law of God after the inward man, and we may yet be impotent to do that law, to render the obedience and worship so see and approve. We need the Holy Spirit. We need the Holy Spirit indwelling for life and worship like. And to receive this, we need first of all to have the flesh silence. But silent all flesh before the Lord. But silent all flesh before the Lord. Let not flesh glory in his presence. To Peter had already been revealed by the Father that Jesus was the Christ, and yet in his thought of the cross, be sovereign not, his mind was not according to the things of God, but the things of men. Our own thought of divine things, our own effort to waken or walk the right feeling must be given up. Our own power to worship must be brought down and laid down, and every approach to God must take place under a very distant and very quiet surrender to the Holy Spirit. To very quiet surrender to the Holy Spirit.